Hello everybody and welcome. Let's wait a few more minutes for the latecomers before we start. Let's say 2 to 3 minutes. People are still joining. All right, I can see that people are still joining, but let's start, and those who will come later will do so. So before starting, I would like to show you 2 short videos of our demo cities, and then we will start the webinar or the final conference if you prefer.
The European project Sinfonia will transform Bolzano into a smart city by 2019. A city that consumes less energy and is a better place to live. To increase the quality of life for its citizens, Sinfonia will implement 3 measures. Social housing will be retrofitted, the district heating grid will be optimized, and a network of smart points will be installed. Insulating the outer skins of buildings will reduce their energy consumption, while solar PV panels installed on their roofs will produce clean energy. The aim is to achieve energy savings of 40 to 50% and to increase the use of energy from renewable sources. In the district heating plant, an alternative fuel engine will become operational, thus reducing the harmful emissions. The heat distribution net will be extended and optimized with a new real-time control and management system that will reduce energy losses. This more efficient system will allow citizens to heat their homes while consuming less energy and saving money. 150 smart points will be placed in Bolzano's neighborhoods and integrated into the existing street lighting. At these smart points, citizens will be able to find useful, real-time information and at the same time recharge their electric cars and bikes. All these measures will transform Bolzano into a smart city and make life simpler for its population. Sinfonia, low-carbon cities for better living.
Surrounded by mountains, the quality of living in Innsbruck is very high. And to keep it like this, through the EU project Sinfonia, measures are already being taken which will turn this alpine urban city into a smart city, a city which requires less energy. With the help of Sinfonia, social housing will be retrofitted, the district heating grid will be optimized, and the use of natural and renewable energy sources will be prioritized. These actions aim to lower primary energy requirements by 40 to 50% and raise renewable energy by 30%. The city sewage will be developed into a power station. The biomass power station produces natural gas, which in addition to fermentation gas generates green electricity and heat. Part of this energy runs the sewage plant itself. The remaining energy is transferred into the power grid. The spare heat supplies the Bagus restaurant as well as the Hallam in the Olympic Village. 68% of the district heating system is already supplied by waste heat and renewable energy. Through the Sinfonia project, more renewable energy sources will be integrated into the district heating system. The absorbent heat pump in Hallam alone can supply heat for 1,500 households. To lower energy usage and to increase the quality of life for citizens, Sinfonia supports the retrofitting of 14 buildings and public schools. Insulating the outer skins of buildings will reduce their energy consumption with the goal of saving 70 to 90% of their heating demand. To confirm an increase in quality, residents will be able to monitor temperature, humidity, and CO2. Public buildings, such as schools, will be transformed into smart buildings, aiming to better use renewable energy sources. Through the use of intelligent heat and electricity saving systems, humidity and room temperature will be easily controlled. Sinfonia turns Innsbruck into a smart city, a low-carbon city for better living.
All right. So this was a short animated introduction to Sinfonia. In our demo cities, we have now around 65 people connected. So I guess we can start. So good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank you all for joining us today at this Sinfonia final online conference. We have had more than 100 registrations for this conference, which is a very nice number, demonstrating the attractiveness and importance of the topics we are going to deal with today. In light of the ongoing situation, we could not unfortunately organize this conference physically as initially planned, but we are happy to at least share our stories with you digitally. My name is Martin Stroleni, and I'll be moderating this conference today. I'm working for Renovate Europe, which is a European expert group dedicated to eco-innovation. This conference is organized, as you already know, by the Sinfonia project, where Renovate Europe is responsible for the replication, communication, and dissemination of the project results. I believe that most of you know quite well the Sinfonia project, since many of you have already participated in the webinars or are a part of it, but let me still say a few words about it before I give floor to our wonderful speakers. So the Sinfonia project started back in 2014 and will end on July 31st after a one-year extension. It is one of the last projects, if not the last, funded by the FP7 program, the 7th Framework Program for Research and Development. It is coordinated by RISE, the Research Institutes of Sweden, and we have our project coordinator, Hakan Parslow, today here with us. He will soon give a presentation. Sinfonia is quite a big project in all possible ways, as it gathers more than 30 partners and has a budget of 43 million euros, out of which 27 was provided by the European Commission. So you can see that it is a very, very big project. And as other European smart city projects, also Sinfonia brings together the so-called lighthouse cities or pioneer cities, if you prefer this terminology, and follower cities or early adapter cities, as they are also sometimes called. In our case, we have two lighthouse cities, Bolzano and Innsbruck. We will have presentations covering both of those cities. And as part of the project, these cities have been implementing innovative large-scale energy solutions and measures in terms of energy refurbishment, district heating and cooling, and the electricity grid, as you could also see it in the videos played in the beginning, if you haven't missed them. The main goals of the project have been 40 to 50% primary energy savings and the increase of the share of renewable energies by 20%. And the activities of these cities have been closely followed by 5 follower cities, representing the manifold climate conditions and cultural backgrounds in Europe. We have Foras from Sweden, Paphos from Cyprus, Séville from Spain, La Rochelle in France, and Rosenheim in Germany. We have today with us a representative from Rosenheim, Robert Freund, who will also give a presentation, so we will learn more about the city in the upcoming minutes. These follower cities have followed and got directly involved in the work of pilot cities, such as tool and solution development validation. We also have a so-called application cluster, which is a cluster of 47 cities, following a little bit less closely the activities and results of the project and benefiting from peer-to-peer support provided by Sinfonia. Sinfonia also joined forces with other 8 like-minded projects under the My Smart City District initiative, serving as joint communication dissemination platform. Apart from demonstration, Sinfonia has been developing many different decision support tools for smarter cities. Many of these tools have been presented during our webinars, so I guess that some of you are already quite familiar with them. But I still invite you to see our website and to learn more about these tools, and also to watch the recordings of our webinars. Some of these tools are free of use and could be definitely useful for some of you. So do not hesitate to have a look. And we'll also have one last webinar presenting the urban service-oriented sensible grid deployed in the city of Bolzano. It will most probably take place in July, so stay tuned. More information will come soon. So now some technical remarks. The conference today is being recorded. Both the recordings and the presentations will be shared shortly after the conference. You are in listening only mode, but after each presentation, there will be space for questions. The questions can be either sent in writing through the question box you see, or asked orally by clicking on the raise hand button you can see on your control panel. You can write your questions or raise hand at any time. They'll be answered, or you'll be given floor to ask them orally at the end of each presentation. We will also have a final 10-minute slot dedicated to final questions, so there is some time for that. Those questions that we will not manage to answer, if it happens, for example, due to time constraints, they'll be answered by email, so do not hesitate to send them to us later on. Now, just a short overview of our agenda for today. So we are pleased to have 6 wonderful speakers with us today. First, we'll give the floor to Johan Toren, who is a sustainability engineer and researcher at RISE, and who will talk about public policies for renovation. Then we'll give the floor to our district leaders. First, Daniele Vettorato for Bolzano, and then Klaus Klewein for Innsbruck, who will present the stories of our 2 pioneer cities. Then they will be followed by Robert Freund, project manager in Rosenheim, who will give us an overview of the story of our follower city, Rosenheim. Then we'll have a presentation from the University of Innsbruck together with Bolzano, who will provide us with an insight into the importance of monitoring energy efficient measures. And finally, we'll finish our presentations with no one else but our project coordinator, Håkan Perslow from RISE, who will say a few words about his vision of Sinfonia and its success stories. Some last minutes will be dedicated to final questions and closing words. So without further ado, I'm pleased to give the floor to our first speaker, Johan Toren from RISE, who will try to answer whether public policies are fitted to boost building renovations. Johan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll get the presentation up and running. I hope you can see it now. Thank you, Martin, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about a bit about policies. So the question is, are public policies fitted to boost building renovation? What I want you to take away from today is, well, they're not currently, and the renovation rates need to be at least doubled to meet the EU commitments currently on climate change and energy efficiency. But I also want you to take away that there are some hope on the horizon, for instance, in the form of the renovation wave proposed under the European Green Deal, also along with the COVID-19 economic recovery plan. So let's get a bit more into the details, yes, the brief overview. Current policies, I would say it's not adequate. Building are responsible for about 40% of EU energy consumption and 35% of greenhouse gas emissions. Currently, 35% of the EU buildings are quite old, over 50 years, and almost 75% of the building stock is deemed energy inefficient. And at the same time, the renovation rates are only about 1% per year. Renovation rates need to increase, as I said before. To meet the EU climate and energy efficiency targets, renovation rates need to increase to at least 2% per year. But in my view, to meet even more stringent targets of the Paris Agreement, the 1.5 degree target, renovation rates need to be stepped up further. Additionally, we talk a lot about climate and energy efficiency, but it's estimated that more than 50 million households in the EU experience energy poverty. This is partly due to inefficient housing, and if this can be remedied as well, a lot can be gained. So policies for boosting building renovation then. Current policies and also forthcoming policies should be a combination of regulatory, financial, and information policies in the sector of buildings, and specifically multi-dweller homes. Regulatory policies has been the most successful, so to say. That got the most impact on the short term, but also on the long term. But for renovation rates to increase, you don't only need renovations, you need financial support, financial mechanisms. And to overcome some issues, such as acceptance from the tenants, for instance, information campaigns and information policies needs to be in place. However, these alone are quite inefficient in boosting renovation and renovation rates. So the policies, as I said, they need to overcome some barriers. I'm sure we hear more about them today, and hopefully also happy examples of how these barriers can be overcome. But there are technical and organizational barriers. Technical ones are quite self-explanatory. Organizational barriers might be that, for instance, it's a hugely competitive market, renovations and cost cuttings are Brune. Therefore, contractors, for instance, are in many cases reuse tenders and not specifically address them to the project at hand and tailor them to the specific building or project to be done. There are also market barriers to energy efficiency. For family dwellings, that can be, for instance, that a huge upfront cost of the renovation is taken by the owner of the house, but while the economic benefits to a large extent fall to the tenants. This is something that needs to be tackled by policies and also by new or improved business models. And lastly, as I said, acceptance at the tenants. But as I said, also there are hope on the horizon. The European Green Deal includes a renovation wave, and this aims to at least double the annual renovation rate of this existing building stock. it also includes both regulatory type of policies and financing. However, the framework is set on a European level. The specifics, as should be, since the building stock and the local conditions are quite diverse in the countries throughout Europe. The more specific policies are up to the single countries of the European Union to make. As I said, there is hope, and there is a great opportunity now to answer the public consultation that is ongoing. You still have some time to do this. It's open until the 9th of June, so I please implore you to answer the consultation to make the plan hopefully even better and more suited for the task at hand. So that was a quite short presentation on policies.
Thank you very much, Johan, for the presentation. And if there are any questions, don't hesitate to either write them down or raise hand to ask them orally. So do you think that Europe can manage to get the rate from 1% up to 2% in the
It's a huge undertaking. I mean, 1 to 2%. It doesn't sound all that much, but in effect it's a doubling of the rate.
That's enormous.
Yeah, and that only meets the target, the climate and energy efficiency targets that are on the table today. If we're going to meet even more stringent targets, as I said, 1.5 degree target, the rate should increase even more. But if we can combine these regular type policies with enough funding, especially funding for where it's needed the most, social housing, as we probably will hear on more, anything can be done if we set our minds to it. And we must to both tackle the climate change and also,
I also think that there's a lot of differences between different countries, I guess. Are there, for example, any countries in the European Union which are close to those 2%, or do you think it's a problem of almost all the countries in the EU?
I would say that there are problems in most countries. Most or all countries need to step up their efforts, both regulatory and financing, to get things done.
Definitely. All right. So if there are no further questions from the audience, then we can move forward to the next presentation, which is Are they smart cities now? And which will present the experience and future ambitions of the pioneer city Bolzano. So Daniele, I give you the floor and you can speak now.
Thank you, Martin. Just to check, do you see the screen, the presentation?
Yes, we can see it very well.
Okay. So the challenging question is, are they smart cities now? Well, of course, the experience and the future ambitions in Bolzano could somehow answer to this question, but yeah, in 20 minutes it's very difficult to summarize more than 6 years of work, including the writing phase and yeah, the designing and the implementation. In this fantastic city that is Bolzano, a mid-sized city of around 100,000 inhabitants located in the heart of the Alps. So I invite you all to visit it once in your life. So we started the journey in very well company, establishing the Bolzano partnership at the very beginning of the definition of the idea of Sinfonia in Bolzano. And we had the chance and the the possibility to work hand by hand with very important entities in the panorama of the stakeholders in the city of Bolzano, starting from the municipality, and then with the local energy utility, the Alperia, the Casa Clima Agency, that is the provincial agency for energy certifications, the Social Housing Institute, that is public and is called the IPES, and the innovation cluster for startups and incubators and support to enterprises in the province of Bolzano, that is IDM. As well, likewise, we were involved as a research institution, URAC Research, based in Bolzano. So we were playing at home with this project that got the trustness of the Commission, receiving for Bolzano 8 million euros of co-financement. But the entire partnership put on the table a much higher, much higher pot. I would say up to 30 million euros of turnover has been calculated in the 6 years of activities, including all the co-financement from the partners, to finalize the activities of Sinfonia in Bolzano, and to achieve all the objectives and all the targets. Of course, the project won't stop here, but I will show you what has been achieved and what are in general what is the heritage that this project will leave in Bolzano. I would like to introduce the area that was mainly hosting the activities of Sinfonia in Bolzano, that is located in the south part of the city, along a small river called Isarco, and targeting mainly a specific type of building, social housing buildings. So it's an area urbanized around the years the 60s and the 70s. So a very well-known typology of buildings if we look to the urbanizations in Italy. This was selected for two reasons. On one end, to target a specific set of buildings that were owned by the municipality and the Institute for Social Housing, to ease a bit the process of consensus creation. But on the other hand, targeting, of course, a group of citizens that would benefit a lot from energy savings, because we were looking also to tackle an issue called energy poverty. But the second point was related to replicability and scalability of the activities, because as said, this typology of buildings is quite diffused in Bolzano, in Italy, in general, also in other European cities. So this could be taken an example to be then replicated in other cities. So the target in Bolzano was to refurbish 32,000 square meters of living surface, reducing the energy consumption by 80%, applying renewables by over 20%. But The concept itself was meant at district scale, and this is very important detail, because district scale with integrated refurbishment is sorry, I can hear a feedback from someone. Is the core of the idea to approach at city scale then the refurbishment of massive building stocks. So the pillars around this scale integrated refurbishment were, of course, energy efficient building retrofitting, but then the optimized district heating and cooling, and the smart electricity distribution and integrated public infrastructures. So the orange pillars. But of course, the technology is not enough, and we learned that we also need to act in other fields like citizens and stakeholders engagement, the performance and scalability assessment, and the knowledge transferability. So the three pillars, as also was asked by the Commission through the call, were referring to three different aspects of the energy refurbishment of the city, of the district, the enhancement of the district heating system, the infrastructure for mobility and services, and the large-scale refurbishment of social housing. As for the first pillar, we have seen during the period of Sinfonia in Bolzano a massive extension and optimization of the district heating network that was already present in the city, but the city took the opportunity to extend it and to connect more buildings to this network. A puffer, you can see it in the second picture in the background, was also installed in order to shape the peaks of demand. So a puffer of hot water is part of the district heating. Likewise, another activity has been carried out in Bolzano that is related to the test of a new engine, hybrid natural gas hydrogen. This was an idea to test in advance the utilization of the hydrogen as alternative fuel mixed with natural gas in order to run the backup engine for the district heating. We had the opportunity, thanks to the partner Alperia, to test this technology. I would say is a first of the kind test in Italy, and we discovered that it works, and it brings a lot of benefits to the environment, especially in relation to the emissions. If you are curious to deep this topic, there are a number of reports available on the Sinfonia website. They are all technical reports. Unfortunately, we don't have time to enter into details now. Sensors, smart points, totems in Bolzano was another pillar. So to speak, bringing the smartness to the city and creating the interface called the urban service oriented sensible grid for the city. So the city itself is able to create and to provide information on its status, its environment. Likewise, is able to provide services to citizens that are integrated and connected all together through a kind of backbone that is able to share information, to store, elaborate, and share information on demand. To give you some example, some traffic routing systems and sensors have been installed in the city in order to route traffic, to optimize the routing. Unfortunately, even if Bolzano is a small city, there are some big issues with private mobility and car congestions, and this bring some situation not very healthy for citizens in relation to emissions in the atmosphere. So lightening the traffic and reducing the congestion brings a lot of benefits on the environmental condition, especially in the air quality. Likewise, the promotion of soft mobility with the extension of bicycle lanes and the promotion of a system to recharge the vehicles changed a bit the model split of the city in favor to a more friendly mobility. The totems are, let's say, the more visible expression of the urban service-oriented sensible grid that I remember is composed by more than 150 sensors in the city. But the totems are three. The totems are the landmark, like to be the prototype of a landmark of the interface between citizens and the smart city. Thanks to the municipality of Baldano, we had the chance to work on a prototype of these totems that host different services, displays, microphone and speakers, internet connection, Wi-Fi, recharge service for vehicles and smartphones, fresh water provision, alarms, SOS, and could be also customized with other technologies like LoRaWAN, defibrillator, night lights, marketing, publicity, and near-field communicator payment systems, and many other features. So we worked with a panel of designers, and we also found a producer in Italy that is able to produce these totems. And as mentioned by Martin, they will be presented in a separate webinar in July. Here you can see some preliminary, let's say, pictures, but I invite you to listen to the following webinar dedicated on this technology. And entering on the core of the activities of Bolzano, we can take a look to the refurbishment of buildings. That was, I would say, the most important in terms of effort activity of the project in Bolzano. So we started with the assumption that there was a room for improvement in relation to the efficiency of the building stock in Bolzano. We ran an extensive analysis of the performances of the buildings in Bolzano, and you can see in these graphs and maps, in this map, the spatial distribution of the energy performance of buildings, where in red we have the worst cases and in green the best cases. As you can see, the predominance of red color suggests that a number of buildings had need to be refurbished. So starting from this, we had the chance also to identify the typologies of buildings that are more contributing to the general inefficiency of the building stock in Bolzano, and then we had the chance to target them with the project. But I'm not going to speak about the technology for refurbishment of buildings, as again, if you are interested, you will find a lot of information on the website in the technical reports. especially related to different technologies that's been prototyped and tested and installed then at large scale in the buildings of Bolzano. We had the chance to work with very clever architects and construction companies that I would say invested a lot and trusted this project in Bolzano. I would say that everyone had the chance to learn a lot during the implementation phase of this project, and I would also say that most of us are ready to continue the journey, bringing all the knowledge accumulated during these years. The city is changing. We can say, yeah, the refurbishment of buildings is not just the improvement of energy performances. Is touching many other aspects of the city. In particular, well, the most visible one is the urban quality. You can appreciate here a picture on before and after. Apart from the numbers on kilowatt hour per square meter year and the reduction that is almost factor 10. In this case, you can appreciate that the new let's say the refurbishment looks like a new building, and is very different from the starting point. The same in this case in Vias Lago. Again, factor 10 of refurbishment. You can look. The right picture is the result of the refurbishment. Looks like a very innovative neighborhood that is completely different from the previous one. I would say that we will look at it a bit later, but the citizens, the users, the tenants that are living there, well, they remain in the buildings. They never been relocated during the refurbishment phase. But if you go there and you ask, are you happy with the process? Are you happy with the final results? They say absolutely yes. And also the community perception increased a lot. So they received a kind of top-down refurbishment, but they together they lived this period of refurbishment. They feel more unite now. They feel more a community. You can see here a picture taken by the fieldworks of this site. Via Brescia Cagliari is the biggest building that we target. Yeah, as you can see, very big number of apartments. Unfortunately, well, the energy performances couldn't reach a factor 10 here, but we have to reduce a bit the effort. Anyway, the result is great. We had the chance to test a number of new technologies and also to show that big buildings can be refurbished, leaving the tenants inside. You can see here a picture of the final result. Just to give you an idea, the whole process, thanks to, as I mentioned, great construction companies could reduce as much as possible the intrusions in the apartments that were occupied, intervening from the external of the buildings as much as possible, and reducing the time of working inside the apartment to really few days. Another example, via Similaun, again, great result in terms of energy refurbishment, but also in terms of urban quality. You can appreciate here another picture. Looks like a new building. Last but not least, Via Palermo had some issues in the refurbishment derived by some analysis on the static issues, and the design has been adapted to these needs. But again, also this type of buildings, this typology has been shown to be refurbishable. In general, we can say that Sinfonia created a kind of integrated packages for the refurbishment of buildings, mixing active and passive solutions together. Also learning from other projects, research projects that were targeting mainly single buildings in order to test the solutions. So we had the chance to take the solutions and the prototypes and all the knowledge elaborated by other research projects to integrate them in real and big case studies. So in total, we had the chance to refurbish 5 sites in Bolzano that you have seen, using different technologies and elaborating packages for the refurbishment of buildings that can be then replicated and scaled to other buildings in the city, but also in Italy and Europe. Another chapter was related to the monitoring system and data acquisition. The recording of the information related to the energy performance, but also the comfort, the indoor comfort of the apartments is crucial to understand if the refurbished buildings works as they should. There is, of course, a difference between what can be calculated during the design phase and what in reality happens when a user, a tenant uses the apartment. We tried, thanks to the project, we tried to intercept these differences and to intervene where possible to solve this barrier. We developed then a display that has been installed in many apartments that show real time to the tenants the performance of the apartment, but also the comfort condition. The assumption here is that an informed tenant is able to act accordingly and to act better in the direction of energy saving and comfort, indoor comfort improvement. Later on, we will have a specific presentation on these aspects. So we will come back to this point later. But also the external condition, the environmental condition outside are really important as we started to work also in the general outdoor modeling of the sites in order to understand where and when we could expect some issues, for example, related to the climate change and the heat islands. You could not be familiar with Bolzano, then I tell you that Bolzano during summertime can reach the same temperature that you can find in Palermo, that is in Sicily, means around 40 degrees. This is due to the position of the city itself, because it's in a narrow valley, so the exchange of air is not really easy if there is no wind. But also is due to the materials that has been used to build the city. So yeah, concrete, asphalt, granite is storing heat and releasing it during night, creating this effect of urban heat island. So it's quite important, even if Bolzano is in the Alps, to tackle this aspect as well at the district scale. So we had the chance to analyze it and to characterize the sites also in this regard. Entering in what I think is one of the most important aspects of the Smart City project and the heritage that has been left to Bolzano from Sinfonia. The quadruple helix model is a model that has been elaborated to describe the components that you need to bring innovation in a context. So according to this model, 4 elements are needed to promote, create and promote innovation in a place. The government, that is the manager of the territory, the city administration, the academia that brings the innovation in terms of research and applied research, industry, that of course is the one that produce the innovation then and create the market, but last but not least, the users, the citizens that should adopt the solutions and then contribute with a kind of mechanisms called the co-creation of solutions. So this quadruple helix model has been used in Bolzano and has been tested in the framework of this city. As well, the concept of multiple benefits. Usually, we think about the project with just one goal. So in the Smart City project Sinfonia, the core indicators, the core targets were the energy performance and the CO2 reduction, emission reduction in the atmosphere. But along the journey, we discovered that there are many other benefits that can be generated by such big projects that are embracing big areas and entire districts of the city. They are called co-benefits, and these co-benefits are the ones that could promote, apart from the energy demand reduction, this co-benefit could really promote the replicability of the solutions of Sinfonia and in general of the smart city concept. The co-benefits are positive effects related to the execution of the project that exceed the primary goal, even if they are not intentional. Looking to what happened in Bolzano, we could record several co-benefits. For example, under the smart natural environment, we had the local air quality improved from fossil fuel heating system to renewables with a reduction on nitrogen and sulfurous and CO2 emission in the atmosphere, but also the environmental resources management improved. For example, the better traffic routing with less congestion, uses of local energy renewable sources, less fossil fuel is important now in Bolzano because the energy is produced locally. As for health and well-being of residents, we learned that better indoor comfort in social housing buildings is possible, and so the air quality inside the buildings are much better than before, and we will see it in one of the next presentations thanks to the data monitored. As mentioned, for fuel poverty, Sinfonia targets social housing buildings, so a group of citizens that could be prone to fossil fuel, to fuel poverty, to energy poverty. Users' awareness on energy-related issues increased. The system that we put in place with the displays give a feedback to tenants and send them real-time interacting information, suggesting also how to save energy. And neighborhood identity enhancement. The tenants welcome the results of the project. Higher sense of community is in place in the refurbishment neighborhoods now. In relation to the smart governance, we have observed innovation in process and decision making, the empowerment of the energy office at the municipality of Bolzano, and the communication between services that was a barrier at the very beginning of the project. So also the data exchange between services within the municipality was not there. And the empowerment of the skills of the partners in managing complex projects. So the cluster of partners in Bolzano now are able to discuss on the same level on complex implementations. Territorial attractiveness has been increased. Bolzano keep very high places in the national ranking of livable cities, also thanks to Sinfonia. Has been ranked on the second place for quality of life in Italy just last year. And institutional relationship and network is created. In fact, the local cluster of partners, as mentioned, is ready to continue to work as a unit. And of course, in fact, other projects already started or are in the pipeline. In relation to the smart economy, might be the most one of the most important aspects when you go to speak to a major, for example, asking to invest in this concept. According to the Copenhagen Economics, 19 jobs are created per million of investment in the sector of energy refurbishment of buildings. So we calculated that according to the turnover generated in Bolzano by Sinfonia, that is 30 millions, 570 new jobs has been created. Positive exchange in local tax revenue could be referred to the test of the Cubature bonus. We tested for the first time the 20% volume bonus linked to the energy retrofit. So we've shown that it's possible to link a virtuous behavior of retrofitting of energy retrofit of building with a premium in volume to the construction companies or to the owners. Soft and long condition. We appreciated the interest from local banks and investors in energy retrofit of building market with new products. Local energy supply chain established and can refer to the empowerment of the local dislocating network. And the local energy utility Alperia started the spin-off on energy refurbishment of buildings called Alperia Bartucci that has the role to start a new branch that related to the refurbishment, energy refurbishment of building connected to the energy service company model. And of course, innovation in technology development and adoption and professional skills development was the first of the kind project for designers and construction companies. So as mentioned, we all learn a lot, and I guess the designers and the construction companies that participate in Sinfonia now are ready to continue the journey. Property value also increased. Sinfonia targeted low performance energy buildings, and the property value increased by 10%. This is an elaboration that we had the chance to do, look into the added value of energy refurbishment of the buildings in the market. Cost reduction of building life cycle. Depending on user behaviors, of course, but we can say that the bills cost has been cut by factor 5 to 10. Less dependency from external sources of energy, more self-reliance in energy now is in place because the buildings are able to produce part of the energy that they need. Last is the mobility. As mentioned, we work on the routing optimization of the traffic, reducing so the congestion, but also in traffic monitoring that could bring additional information also in the medium long-term design of the new traffic system of Bolzano. So from 2012, when we brought the project to 2020, past 8 years. That is a really long time. And we have seen the concept itself of smart city changing. We can say that we brought Bolzano from a concept of smart city 1.0, where just the technology was important, to a concept of smart city 3.0, where citizen co-creation and multiple benefits counts as well, passing through the engagement of the public administration. I finished the presentation, and I thank you all for the attention. I'm happy to receive some questions, if any.
Yeah, thank you very much, Daniela, for this exhaustive presentation. We actually have 2 questions here, so I'll just read them out. So the first one is Theodoros Gilkas, who is asking if the reduction of energy consumption by 80% was achieved, because he was astonished that it was quite a huge percentage, and if the buildings which were refurbished were very old and low-performing buildings.
Yes, it has been achieved. The numbers that I've shown in the slides, first and after the refurbishment, are real. I mean, yeah, they are calculated, but according to the measures that we are recording, they are in line with, yeah, with also the monitored data.
All right. Yeah, that's what you presented as well. Then we have a second question from Vasilis Giannopoulos. As part of smart home principles that have been implemented, was the evaluation of thermal comfort in buildings, apartments, part of it? Were there any adaptive methods used that allowed the residents for higher control of their thermal environment?
Well, the concept that we put in place is the ones of informed tenants. We reduced the automatization so they are free to set their comfort zone as they wish. Of course, they have some tools and instruments to be used, so they can increment or reduce the temperature of the heating system, that they can on and off the ventilation, the mechanical ventilation system if needed. They can, of course, open and close the windows as they wish. The fact is that well, the assumption is that if we inform them and we somehow teach them how to save energy, we could also achieve another target, that is the creation of this consciousness in the citizens. is too easy to make it automatic. But on the other hand, is also perceived as an intrusion, especially if we speak with some specific group of citizens that might be used to have the full control of their houses, so they are not really keen to adopt smart solutions. So we just installed the display that is on the one hand showing what we are recording through the sensor, which is important also from the privacy issue. So they are aware of what is recorded and registered by the sensors. But we make this information available in form of infographics, so they are should be at least very accessible to different groups of citizens, elderly people, but also the new generation.
All right, thank you. I don't see any further questions, and we are running a little bit late, so I will give the floor to our next speaker, which is Klaus from the University of from the city of Innsbruck. So, Klaus, the floor is yours.
Do you already see my screen, the presentation?
Yes, you can see it and we can hear you as well.
So, one moment, just that I see my presentation as well. Would be good. One moment. So happy to be here and have the honor to talk behind after Daniele for all of you. I'm no scientist, so my presentation will more be the view of the local coordinator of the city or municipality of Innsbruck and the measures we have achieved here. I will start the whole story with how did the whole project get started, following talking a little bit about the demo measures, and finishing with the challenges and benefits of such a long-term project. Well, the local consortium was formed also by the main contributors we needed in this project, which is the municipality of Innsbruck, or following the quadruple helix, which Daniele just presented, the scientific partner, the governance partners. We had industry partners like the Institute, like consulting companies, the ATB Becker with photovoltaics knowledge. And of course, we also had as partners the local energy utility providers, as well as the housing companies of Innsbruck and the Passive House Institute to follow all these measures. So I think it's quite, even if the whole story started already 9 years ago, we were following the theory quite early in these terms. The story started, if you want to call it like this, with a trip to Brussels organized from the local development agency and the cluster of renewable energies. Then we found out that there was this call, and the funding team of the local development agency was looking at this call and said, oh, the basis we have, which means that there was already a strategic energy plan from the municipality of Innsbruck. The housing companies were already building in a high standard. There were concepts of the local utility to transform the wastewater treatment plant, as well as the district heating extension. And of course, the University of Innsbruck was also quite amused of the idea to hand in a proposal in this call. So the story went on, talking with politics, talking to the municipality of Bolzano, and so on and so on, and finding more partners. And then a huge point was finding a good coordinator, which we were lucky to find it in Sweden with Håkan, who you will hear afterwards. So the call deadline was in December 2012, which is already almost 8 years ago. Then we had to wait until the consortia agreement was agreed on. The project could finally start in June 2014. This is just to give you an idea that transforming a city into a smart city starts already a long time ago, and I think it was worth it. So the mentioned energy plan from 2011 had the challenge of course, reducing energy demand and making a higher share of renewable energies, which goes also in line with the 3 main activities and Sinfonia goals we had, which were composed of 50% of energy savings, 30% more of renewable energy, and 20% less CO2 emissions. So there was the smart district, which means you need a basis. So a baseline had to be calculated so that you had an idea what is the city at the start of the project, to have also something to refer on when the city or the project has ended. This means this was the start of the project, and this map was also composed in cooperation with many partners of the project. And the first time this, let's say, evil word of data protection came into our mind, because this was the first time we got to know, oh, it's quite difficult to obtain all the data you need to make a city work. The next step is, and I think this is really the most important, means that you need several systems to be integrated, and also socioeconomic factors within this project. Honestly speaking, I think we didn't have in mind so much the social aspects in the beginning. We rather focused on technological issues. But in the course of my presentation, you will hear why this social component is quite important in this project. This is a map of Innsbruck, and on the left side, you can see all the measures we have demonstrated, we have finished along this project, and they are mainly based in the east side of the city, and the dotted points is the district heating line. So the district heating system was quite extended throughout the project. On this picture, you can see the blue line, which was at the start of the project, and several years later, the blue line, as you can see, was extended quite heavily. So it was of course a long-term plan to extend the whole network, but on the east side, as you can see, there is a connection here from the wastewater treatment plant to the district heating district. And this is also what I mean when I talk about integrating several systems, because talking about the wastewater treatment plant, we have to admit that this was a consumer in the beginning of this project, and it was transformed into a producer of energy as well, thermal and electrical energy. Even more, this is the transformation station right in the middle, in the heart of the city, but it has something in there. This is a machine with a quite simple heat pump, which in the end is now producing almost 70% of the heat demand of the administrative building of the house. So talking about energy efficiency measures. And this is one of the projects I think the local utility is really proud of. This is an integrated management system where several sources of energy have been integrated, and is now, as the name says, the Smart City Lab, where you can say this is the laboratory of finding out new findings which we will hopefully apply in the future, because this is what everybody is talking now all over Europe, the integration of several systems, and this on a small scale has been developed there. And just right on the other side of the street, there is a new positive energy district built, and hopefully some findings can also be applied already there. Coming to innovative refurbishment. In Innsbruck, not only housing buildings were refurbished, and no, I will not talk about the energy KPIs, and this has a reason, because after me, there will be Wolfgang Streicher presenting the monitoring results, and he's professor for energy efficient buildings, so I think it's better to let him talk about the energy efficiency standard which has been applied. The only thing I can say that the goals have been achieved, and as you can see here, also local schools have been refurbished, not only outside but also inside. Maybe in this picture you can see that the lighting has been changed, so that daylight lighting system which is following the daylight, so the concentration of the pupils is improved. Also, the fresh air is coming in backward from the pupils and is extracted in the front. I think this is also important, and of course it was LED. So lots of measures inside and outside of the schools have been adapted throughout this project. Now coming to the social part, which of course was taking lots of our time in this project, because as you can see here, talking about refurbishments, there are really many stakeholders to get involved to get it done. Which means on the one hand side, you have the residents of the buildings, and you need the permission of the residents to be allowed to refurbish their building. Even more, you do not only need the allowance to refurbish the building, but you also need the allowance to monitor the building. So they had to sign several papers in order that our project will be successful, which means there lots of time had to be afforded in order to get these residents in the boat of Sinfonia. And this is also when we talk about socio-economic integration, because it's not only the energy suppliers, the executive actors on the one side, there are financial aspects and the building owners, and also the customers, residents, and so on and so forth. So building refurbishment, and I think this is one of these topics which will be getting really important, following a quote of architect from the Netherlands who once said 80% of the buildings which have to be made energy efficient are already there. This for me is that the findings we have found here within this project are rather important for the whole of Europe and not only for Innsbruck or Bolzano. So we come to this term of monitoring. Monitoring and the technical aspects Wolfgang will describe you in, I think, half an hour about. But this is also a technical issue, which is rather complicated in terms of data protection issues, because passing on data from flats where people live, as you can imagine, during this project, a term called General Data Protection Regulation started. So this didn't make things easier. But also this was covered successfully by the consortium of Innsbruck and Bolzano. And this also gives you an idea of a smart city is not only about technical issues, it's really about social issues and also legal issues. Another issue is the thing of replicability and the transfer of our findings to other cities. Well, some of you might know the city of Innsbruck. It's in the heart of the Alps, surrounded by mountains. And there is one of the replication cities, Paphos. Just on the first, if you see this picture, you might think, oh, what has this to do with the other side? There is one measure implemented in Innsbruck, for example, we used the biomass. I think biomass is available all over Europe. We have lots of trees, there are algae and seaweed, in, for example, in Cyprus. I think there are other biomass resources all over Europe which can be used to contribute to energy. While in Innsbruck, the problem is more the cold winters. Of course, in Cyprus, it's the warm summers. So isolation also affects the buildings against overheating in summer and getting too cold in winter, which is our problem when it snows here. And it's nice to have a warm house even when it's snowing. So some challenges have already been mentioned during this presentation, but also keep in mind, as you have heard, it started almost 8 years ago, and so there were lots of changes in the local consortium, which didn't make things easier. There were political changes, there were personal changes, and therefore we always had to adapt to new situations and new circumstances. We were quite lucky that let's say, the coordinator from Sweden and the local coordinators from Innsbruck and Bolzano, that they were, let's say, the people who stayed in the project from the beginning to the end. And I think this helped also to make this project work. Well, the legal issues have also been mentioned already. I won't get into detail again, but also count with negative press. The project starts, and in the beginning, to the outside, almost nothing happens, because refurbishment issues take time. Transforming a wastewater treatment plant takes time. So in the beginning, it's also said there is this no project and nothing happens. Now, years after, we can say lots of things have happened. And this is one of the most successful issues, that now the press turned into positive aspects, whereas in the beginning it was quite negative. So I think you have already heard that there were lots of benefits for the city of Innsbruck. I think the most important thing for the people living in the city is that there is a better quality of life in the new refurbished houses. There is a more efficient energy distribution throughout the whole city, and new technologies have been applied and will be applied even in the future. There is a faster implementation towards the low carbon society. You can also call it was a boost for the strategic energy plan, and also to get more into this direction. And we also have to keep in mind that this is also what the Green Deal wants us to do. So we are going on this path of the Green Deal of the European Commission. The inter and transdisciplinary cooperation. In the beginning, I don't think it was a benefit, it was more a challenge. But in the end, everybody saw that the cooperation among the partners is one of the greatest benefits of this project. Even if it's not easy, that you have the demonstration partners and the university partners who have to cooperate. But in the end, if they cooperate, a better result is coming out. And I think this is what counts in the end, even if the planning process is getting even longer, but in the end, the result is better. And I think this is what is important for a city, that the result for the city is better. This means that a lot of knowledge transfer within the partners of Innsbruck to the partners of Bolzano. As you have heard, the housing companies of Bolzano had the same issues. And I think housing companies all over Europe will tackle and face the same issues we have had already here in Innsbruck. So there is an important knowledge transfer for this project, and the whole idea was also building, let's say, or finding ideas and models of being replicated throughout Europe. There was also a change of innovation culture within the companies being part of this project. When I can only talk about the local utility company, which installed an innovation manager throughout the course of this project. There is lots of things have been done, new business models have been invented, because if you think about a house, a multi-family house in the beginning of this project, because of legal issues, was not allowed to has a PV installed. Only so the PV could be installed, but the housing company was not allowed to be the provider of the PV. So the local utility company had to come into this game, and being So the roof was in the end rented to the local utility company, being the provider of energy. So new business models have been found and further developed, and I think we started with 3 models in the beginning, and throughout this project a new business model was created. Even more, there was also talking about business. There were, of course, economic effects on the local economy. There was an investment of more than 80 million euros throughout this project coming into the regional economy, and also because of course most of the workers were out of the region, and this saved more than 600 full-time equivalents throughout the whole project. So you see there is also a huge economic effect of funding from the European Union has on the regions implementing these measures. But I started with the beginning, but the story goes on. So many of these companies, talking about the housing companies, have already been engaged in follow-up projects. One is dealing the performance gap, because we found out in Sinfonia that building a good house is one thing, using the house, meaning the user interaction, is the other thing. So also the awareness for the people living in these houses has to be built, and now there is a research project dealing this performance gap of these issues. Also I talked about a positive energy district which is built right now. In this project, which has also received funding from the national authority, lots of the partners in Sinfonia are engaged in as well. So you see already lots of the findings we found out here in Sinfonia will be applied in the future, and the cooperation which was established will also go on. Even more, a smart city governance structure has been established in the municipality of Innsbruck, saying that also the local utility company, the housing companies, the municipality said we have to be in one boat to make the city better and more livable in the future. And last but not least, a smart city office has been established just recently. And I think this is one of these issues why I'm now here sitting with like a hybrid, once dealing the district leader, being from the Regional Development Agency, and now being the head of the Smart City Office in the municipality of Innsbruck. So in the end, you see, the story started with a trip to Brussels, and it will go on, hopefully, for a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Klaus. We can see that a lot of things have happened since the beginning of the project in Innsbruck, not only. And I can see that we have one question, so I will just read it out and we can go on to the next presentation. So Naomi, hi Naomi, is asking why was the beautiful wood ceiling in the school not reused in the refurbishment?
This is a good question. We should rather ask the responsible housing company why it was not used anymore. But I think it has a technical issue because there was installed a hot ventilation air condition system, and of course the tubes had to be integrated. And this might be the reason that the wood ceiling they got rid of it, and maybe also because of illumination issues, because the wood is also quite dark, and you want a school where let's say the daylight is more likely imitated, and that's why it's important to that they put it out. But this is an assumption. So if you want this answer, I have to ask the housing company.
Yes, of course. And from your point of view, what has been the most difficult or the most challenging part? Was it more the technical aspect or the social one?
Well, as you have heard my presentation, I think the social issues are the more complicated ones, because getting people to cooperate is quite a hard issue. And I think this is really, so technical issues are hard, and finding the right measures to implement a ventilation system in a building already here is technically quite challenging. But getting all the permissions from the residents and getting the people cooperate, university, with housing company, with industry, with municipalities, I think this is rather more, and this is also what stays for the long term.
Yes, that's what I thought. All right, thank you very much also for your answers and to know me for a question. And now we can give the floor to our next speaker, Robert Freund from the city of Rosenheim, who will share the story of this follower city with us. So, Robert, over to you. The floor is yours.
Okay. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, you do.
Okay, perfect. So good afternoon from Rosenheim. Thanks for inviting me to present about our role and the activities in the Sinfonia project. And as you all will know, bridging the gap between usual refurbishment and future-oriented replication can be very hard and quite challenging sometimes. So these are the contents I was invited to talk about. You can see it on this slide, and I will move very quickly to the next one. Okay, what is the role of Rosenheim? Sinfonia. As you already heard, there are different clusters of cities, the pilot cities, Bolzano and Innsbruck, and the replication cluster cities, and Rosenheim belongs to the group of early adopter cities. For those who don't know where Rosenheim is located, you can see it on the map, the orange pin next to the text box. So it's in the triangle between Munich, Salzburg, and Innsbruck. As an early adopter city, we haven't had any investment budget for investment measures. However, we had a budget for personnel costs and other costs like e.g. traveling costs. However, I think it was really very good for us to have the chance to learn about the innovative solutions which have been developed in Bolzano and Innsbruck directly. So this was really very valuable for us, as well as the support we received from several project partners during the project. I will go a little bit more into detail in this context later. So what about the activities we performed? When I started working in the Sinfonia project in July 2017, I first had to collect the data and information which was necessary in context with the district analysis. And of course, there were a lot of other tasks to do in this context. You can see them on the slide. But I want to point out one of them, and this is the information of the local stakeholders on the progress and about the interim results of this project. For example, I did on several occasions presentations in the meetings of the Environment Committee of our City Council, and had the opportunity to inform the politicians about the project and the progress in context with the project. In this context, there will be the next meeting on July 21st, and then I will do a final presentation on the Sinfonia project. And of course, we also had the opportunity to host a project meeting, which took place, as you might suppose, before Corona. It was in September 10th and 11th last year. I'd also like to point out the contents which have been prepared for the Sinfonia website, because I want to take the chance to point out once more that there's a lot of valuable content on this website, and we also prepared some articles. But of course, there's a large variety of project results and documentations and all those things. So I think those who do not know it very exactly up to now, it's really worth having a look at it. Two things, or one thing I would like to point out in this context: the Institute of Building Biology and Sustainability, IBN, and the brewery were the two sites we visited within the program of the dissemination workshop on 12th of September last year. Okay, what about the support we have received? Generally spoken, it was really very helpful and valuable to receive the support from the project partners in various forms, as you can see on the slides, and I will go into detail a little bit more later on. But I also would like to point out that it was really very valuable as well to have some time, a time budget, to present those innovative solutions to the local stakeholders. As you can see on the slide, especially the politicians, I already mentioned that, the local housing company and the local utility. However, in this context, I have to be honest that we still have to work on activating and motivating and convincing them. Now, regarding the support we have received from other project partners, here's one example. The front side and the back side of an information leaflet, which was prepared by Alps in context with the toolkit for stakeholder engagement. If I may make a short remark in this context, I was very glad that we were able to receive this leaflet in German languages as well, because if I want to inform and motivate the persons in charge in the administration or at the local housing company, there might be a language barrier if all of the material is only available in English language. So this might be helpful and could make them interested, and if they need some help in context with the toolkit, I'm of course happy to support them. Another result, two results in context with the analysis of the districts. On the left side, you can see the title of the analysis with using the Crocus tool, which was performed by Dowell. And on the right side, the first slide of the presentation of the master thesis Carsten Busche did for a specific area in Rosenheim, Castenau. So let's go a little bit more in detail in context with the results of the study, which was performed by Dowell. On the left side, you can see, or on both sides, you can see the city map of Rosenheim, and the areas which are colored are those areas that was available for. And Dowell did some simulations in this context. These are two results regarding the payback times in average for the chosen districts for a standard renovation and on the left side, and an advanced renovation on the right side. As energy price increase, a rate of 4% per year was chosen. And what does it mean, advanced renovation and standard renovation? The standard renovation is a renovation in which the building of the refurbishment achieves the standard of a newly constructed building according to the current regulations, the Energieeinsparverordnung, energy savings regulation, and the advanced renovation uses within the advanced renovation passive house components are being used, so it's comparable to the NFIT standard of passive housing. So there is an overview on the payback times depending on the specific scenarios. Okay, I also would like to show you this slide, which was also prepared by Dowell, thanks to Karin. You can identify on this diagram those districts which have a very low payback time at the one hand, and high specific CO2 savings on the other hand. So this might also be a hint where to start and intensify the district refurbishment activities. Another diagram was prepared in this context because, as already said before, usually it's only the money is predominant in the discussion, and for that reason, I guess that this diagram might be very helpful, which shows for the districts investigated the annual energy costs for space heating per dwelling in Europe. So in Euro per year. And of course, these districts are very inhomogeneous, and it's very difficult to calculate the values because there's also important to have user behavior in mind. But I think one can say at about, if one has to pay 1,000 euros per year for space heating for his dwelling, this is not untypical. And the other diagram, please note that it's the same scale, shows the annual energy cost for space heating per dwelling after the advanced refurbishment. And I think it's quite impressive and is helpful in context with discussions, also in context with tackling fuel poverty, as already mentioned before. If you can show the difference between the actual state and the state after an advanced refurbishment. So, and in this context, of course, it's not only about the energy costs. Of course, you have to take into consideration that someone has to pay for the refurbishment. But in this context, you can think of subsidies, you can think of tax reductions, you can think of extra benefits like allowing additional floors, like it was done, for example, in Innsbruck and Bolzano. But you can see that there's a large difference, and of course it's also a matter of the co-benefits, which Daniele mentioned already before, because if you do not spend the money for importing energy, like for example natural gas, you can create jobs and value added, at least in the region as well. Okay. So what about our future activities? We will try to use the results gained within the Sinfonia project in context with the acceleration of refurbishment activities in the district. Some of you might know that there is in Germany a program, Städtebauförderung, and there are some of the areas with districts which might be very attractive in context with refurbishment activities are in the same areas as there is a Städtebauförderung available. So this will be the first to address in this context. Of course, I will make the results, the final results, also available for the local stakeholders. An additional information which might be interesting in this context regarding the framework, it's also in the same meeting of the Environment Committee, which I already mentioned before, on 21st of July. There will be decided on a climate protection initiative and a climate adaptation strategy, which we will need both. And a very soon future activity, in August 2020, finally we will move back to our refurbished administration building, which was insulated with 20 centimeters insulation on the wall and on the roof. And on the roof there is a PV system. The whole roof is covered with the PV system with a maximum of 66 kilowatt peak. Okay, so yeah, I think that was it. So I'd like to thank for the attention, and I'd also like to thank the other project partners in the project team for the very good cooperation and for the support we have received. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. And now we have some space for one or two questions, as we usually do. So we already have one question from Naomi. She's asking whether the Carsten's master thesis is publicly available, the one you talked about in the presentation, because she would like to read it.
Yeah, of course. As far as I'm informed, it is not officially available at the moment. Maybe I'm not sure whether there is someone from the Passive House Institute in the audience who has additional information. But of course, if you send me an email, I can make it available to you as soon as it will be possible, but not at the moment, as far as I'm informed.
All right, definitely. I can follow up on that with you afterwards and then send it to Naomi once it's available, as you said. And what do you think has been the biggest takeaway or benefit of Rosenheim being in the project? Was it more the cooperation and getting new partnerships and contacts, or the analysis of districts to refurbish in the future, or something else from your point of view? There was one thing that you would like to stress as the major benefit of.
Well, I think all of the things you mentioned were very valuable for us, and I think the package as a whole was the interesting and valuable thing for us, because the cooperation with the partners, the support in context with those specific tasks, and as I already mentioned, that I had some time to present the solutions to the relevant stakeholders. I think it was the package as a whole, which I would not say what could miss. What I could leave out in this context.
Yes, definitely, I understand. And so based on the analysis that you made with Double concerning the districts to refurbish, I guess you haven't started refurbishing anything yet, but in the future you will use it for some refurbishment projects, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, we haven't started yet, but as the process in context with the program Städtebauförderung, which I already mentioned before, will be activated and accelerated again. It is a very good opportunity to put the results of the Sinfonia project into this process.
Yes, and bring it up, definitely. Well, I thank you very much for your presentation and for the responses to my questions. Okay. And now I will give the floor to our next speakers, who will talk about the monitoring of energy efficient measures. So it will be Wolfgang and Daniele. Wolfgang is from the University of Innsbruck, and Daniele already talked before, and he's from URAC. So Wolfgang, the floor is yours, and we can see your screen. We can see you as well, so everything should be all right.
Just one question: how can I see the screen myself?
You don't see it?
I just see what. Okay, I'm just scrolling up here. Okay, but if you see my screen, that's fine.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
So I'm in the beginning now. Is that correct?
Yes. You're on the first slide.
I am on the first slide. Okay. So a very warm welcome also from my side, again from Innsbruck. I'm very happy to present what we have done so far and our results. I am responsible for, it's called work package 5. So this is all the monitoring. So it's the interesting part is what all the refurbishment, all the measurements we did we achieve our goals? And did the renovation work, and if we extrapolate what we did in the Sinfonia project or the whole city, do we also reach our overall goals for the city? So there was reduction of the energy demand and increase of the renewables. So the objectives of our work package, which we wrote about 8 years ago, and we have to reach now is, of course, to develop a cost-efficient methodology to follow up that technical and non-technical KPIs are reached. So it's the measurement itself. So how to set up a measurement campaign in the buildings. When we started, there was no data protection laws in the way we had right now. So that was a bit tricky in the project to adapt to the new regulations. Of course, then we have to make the assessment, which I will show at least for the buildings that are done so far. For the socioeconomic measures, I think we will, I don't have the results here, but Daniele pointed out in his speech also people most satisfied in these new buildings, despite the fact that they were very critical in the beginning. So maybe some highlights here. So we offered all our tenants in the buildings for free a ventilation system and social housing. So it's the social standards are not very high, but they would have a ventilation system for free, and only 30% of the people accepted to get it because it has a bad image and they don't want to have people in their apartments and so on. So there was a lot of socio-economic, social impact, at least here. Of course, okay. So, and finally, so the technical assessment, of course, and we have to see, do we reach our goals, or is there the performance gap that you can always find in literature? So if you do a renovation, you plan something, then you end up in worse values. But I will show that at least for Innsbruck, we could really achieve our goals. In order to measure the buildings, we had a twofold strategy. So first, on the right side, you see we measured the whole building, the electricity demand, electricity, domestic hot water, and so on. So to differ between space heating and domestic hot water demand, and also for the household electricity demand. This looked very simple and easy, but again, the data protection law was coming in here very strict. So we had long more than 1 or 2 year discussion with our utilities if they can give us the data for these buildings, because if there are more or less than 8 or less than 5 or what number ever you take, people are in there, you could trace back the electricity demand. And they said, well, we need to have a tenants agreement with all the tenants in the building that they allowed that we get the lumped data of the whole building, which we did not get. So that took us 2 or 3 years to find a number of, if there are more than this number of people in the building, that we can get this data, because that's, we can trace back personal data. Of course, per apartment, we needed to have always these tenant agreements. So we can also only measure in apartments where the tenants agreed that who is getting the data, what is being done with the data, and how long is the data being kept. And this has to be signed. And therefore, we had to set up a database where all the security issues with the data were fulfilled. So per apartment, we measure the same thing, and we also measure the now the indoor air quality in terms of temperature, humidity, and CO2 content. Okay, so that was the general approach, which turned out to be far more tricky than we had thought of in the beginning. So results for Innsbruck, I don't go into detail. So that's our measurement structure. So we use an emboss system, which turns out to be very robust and could have been done with, we did it also with wireless and with wired connections. And in order to keep all the data security issues, we send emails via a firewall to our main server where we do the whole thing. So all calculations are done in capsule servers where nobody else has access, only the people that are allowed to get the data, and every data point has, let's say, has the data protection issues that only the people that are allowed to look at this specific data can see in it. That makes things really a bit strange, but that's the law, and we have to fulfill the law. And we learned that no matter if the European Union is talking about big data from buildings, it's very difficult to get this big data. But finally, we have at least sorry, was there a question? Okay, but finally in Innsbruck, we were able to measure 235 apartments and school classes. So we had also 2 schools in there. And of 9 of these buildings, we're able until end of July to deliver 1 year measurements. And for some of the buildings, for 4 buildings, we need to measure for a longer period until the end of the year. But this is a kind of deal with our with the European Union that we deliver later the final reports. Of course, results, we have loads of results. This is just to give you a glimpse what's coming out. So we have made clusters of temperatures, in this case of CO2 concentrations in the classrooms, and how often did they appear in the different months we were measuring. And we see that we have the CO2 concentrations are in a very good range, for example, that the temperatures are in a very good range. Of course, we have also classrooms which were not that good. So this was done quite nice. And for two schools, we have already a 1-year measurement since some while already. And if you take, for example, Siegmeyer schools, they had a beginning of 150. Or wait, I take this laser pointer, then you see it better. We had in the beginning about 150 kilowatt hours per square meter in year only for space heating. We said we go down to 81, not more, because this was a protected building, heritage protected building. These were calculated values. The measured values were already lower, but we came down to the measured final energy consumption far lower, because we were allowed to do a bit more as we had in the beginning. So we had a far lower energy demand in the end, as we suggested. And very similar it was for the other school. We started with a similar value, but as it was not natural heritage, we wanted to go down far more, and that's where we end up finally. So also here we could even undergo the values we were achieving. And then you see for ventilation, lights, domestic hot water, the specific demand. So a ventilation system does not have to be very energy consuming if you do it in the right way. Also 2 examples from buildings. So this is a refurbished building, or a cell block it's called. So we have an electric energy demand. This building was strangely renovated. It has now direct electric heating, but the tenants did not allow to put in a centralized heating system. They had decentralized systems, and they did not agree, so we had to put in something decentral. And here, as we had a very good insulation on the building, we need very, very little electricity. But this just should not be the standard at all. And again, we had the best sheet, so that was what we suggested, 23 kilowatt hours per square meter in year. We had a monitoring of 20, but of course it was a bit warmer in this year, so we ended up more or less where we wanted to be. So if you do it, if you have a very good on-site monitoring during the refurbishment, if you have very good control in here, if you have a good prefabrication and a good planning, then you can really reach the values that you were predicting. Of course, I know that this is not always the case. So of course, we have many other measurements. That's another building, source, set, space heating, domestic hot water over the years, temperatures, and so on. I don't go into detail. So these are the different apartments we were measuring in this building. And you see there is a wide range within the different apartments. And if you just measure 5 apartments out of 50, then you cannot really say anything about the whole building, because it's quite a wide range from here to here, just of different user behavior in the different apartments. Of course, you have to look if the indoor air quality is reached, so you can have graphs like this. So the temperature and the relative humidity measured. So here it's an example where we match our goals very well. But if you go to another apartment in this building, then you see this apartment is out of range. So it is very different, even in the same building, from apartment to apartment, if you reach these indoor air stuff or not. And that's why we do also for the monthly averages, we may make these box plots that you see what is the variability of the different buildings. Well, results of Innsbruck buildings just lumped together. That's for PV installations that we did. So on most of the buildings, we had many square meters of PV on there. Oh, sorry, that's the capacity, yes. And unrated production, but PV is working quite well. And of course, there were many other measures done in Innsbruck by AKB. So biogas, CHP, heat pumps, PV installation, heat recovery of the sewage system. It's not the time here to show all the results, but what I can say is that also most of these appliances matched what we predicted. So I'm quite happy to say that I mean, we did not measure everything so far, but as far as we measured, we could bring it close to where we predicted. And then we made finally an extrapolation. So if we do these measures, if we apply them for whole Innsbruck, where would we end up? And without going into details with the numbers, we could show that we have a reduction of primary energy and space heating we could achieve by 54%. And the renewables, which were not that high in Innsbruck so far, we could easily increase by far if we would apply the measures we did in these buildings in all buildings of Innsbruck. Okay, so I hand over to Daniel. But you have to tell me when I have to switch to the next slides.
Yeah, thank you, Håkan. Okay, next. Next. First of all, I'm speaking on behalf of many colleagues that worked on this monitoring system in the last months that somehow became more complicated, as mentioned by Volkan, due to the introduction of GDPR, and yeah, so we had to change a bit the design of the monitoring system that we elaborated at the beginning. I would also thank a lot the hosting entities of the monitoring systems, IPES and the Municipality of Bolzano, because their technicians worked with us in close connection, trying to solve daily issues. Starting with these sentences, I'm introducing the fact that the monitoring system is quite complex. It's not an easy activity that is full of unforeseen events. This is because it's not easy to find the market an already prepared monitoring system that can fit these needs. So the customization of this system and the integration of different components can bring to different issues to be solved. By the way, this is the schematic representation of the monitoring system in Bolzano. As you can see, we are using differently from Innsbruck. We are using a REST API to connect to the buildings, and then yeah, with different measures for keeping security. Flow of information will reach a server, and then we go back to the apartments, showing the information to a display that is installed in the apartments. We also try to target a high number of sensors in order to have different measures or different dimensions measured in the apartments. So we have the traditional temperature, humidity sensors, but also we cover the mechanical ventilation state and of course the energy consumption, but also the opening and the closing of the windows. I will explain later why. Next. Next. Yeah. In general, we have these numbers of monitored apartments. You can see that they are not covering all the apartments of the buildings. So we have in some cases almost the half of the apartment monitored. In any case, the results at the moment is really going in the direction of big data. As you can see, the number of sensors installed and the number of values already recorded is close to millions. Next. This is a picture of the state of the monitoring. As said, we experienced some delays and connected to unforeseen events. and systems that were not properly working. But this is the situation now. We are running up with all the systems running, and these are the numbers of months of measures already recorded. Next. What I was introducing before is the feedback to tenants. So the information, the monitoring information are elaborated in a server and then are sent back to the tenants through this system that we call the feedback to tenants. Is a display that is placed in the apartment, the monitored apartment, that can inform real time the tenants about on their energy consumption, but also the comfort conditions from humidity, temperature, air quality, but also can give them a kind of suggestions and information about risky states. Let's say when the air quality is not enough good, and also suggestion how to solve the issue, keeping the energy consumption low. For example, here, well, is in Italian, but the air is not good, so increment the ventilation system. Yeah, next, please. As said, there are different blocks and widgets that are populating the screen, so can be also customized. Next. But also we have a recording of trends, so the tenants can access the historical data to see their trends. So they are not just receiving an energy bill every 2 months now, but they can access the entire full set of information, real time, but also the historic data. The next.
Yeah.
One of the most important aspects of this system was the social comparison. We are running currently 2 groups. One is the control group and the other is the treatment group, in order to understand, to appreciate, to show, to demonstrate if the display makes a difference in improving the energy behaviors of tenants. So we can give different information to different groups of tenants. Next. Not working. Okay, you can see here a real display installed in an apartment. Next. Okay, and then comes to preliminary graphs related to the recorded measures. Unfortunately, we are still closing the process related to GDPR, so some data sets are not accessible yet. So these are just preliminary analysis of the measures. You can see here, for example, this last winter that the buildings start the new heating system. There was a possible issue in the first months of the winter, November, December, where the temperatures in the apartments, this is the average of all the monitored apartments in Passeggiata, the Castagni were too high. Then there is a decrement of the temperature. We are analyzing the data in order to understand if that was a coincidence with the. In fact, in January we started to install also the displays, and would like to understand better if that made the difference. So the tenants were aware of the temperature, and then they could adjust it accordingly. Next, this is the CO2 concentration in the apartment. What I didn't say is that we also run a pre-monitoring campaign before the refurbishment. So where you see a pre, it means that is the recorded measures before the refurbishment, and then the post is the current. So we can compare the previous performances, and this is quite clear, the improvement of the conditions in relation to CO2 concentration in the apartments after the improvement after the refurbishment, thanks to most probably the mechanical ventilation system. Next. This is just to remark, this is a pre-monitoring of CO2 in 5 apartments, and next, the situation of the post monitoring in the same building. This is the average of 26 apartments. Next, please. Okay, preliminary results of Via de Castaños in terms of energy consumption. The numbers must be still validated, so we are not really happy with these numbers at the moment, but happens that we had some problems during the winter with the heating system, as also shown in the previous slide. The temperatures were really high, so we have also to better understand, to validate these numbers further, but we just started to analyze them. So please. This is some numbers again. I don't want to bother you with the big numbers, but a lot of numbers, but these are the final calculations as per the certificates of the building. So you can appreciate the before and after refurbishment, the final and primary energy demand, as well the production from renewable energy sources in the sites, as well in the table down below, the energy demand kilowatt hour per square meter per year per site. Next. And likewise for the photovoltaic installation, these are as we have seen for Innsbruck, the installed capacity and the foreseen hour production. Okay, as for the scaling and replicability of the solutions, we run a simulation to understand the scenario. What if we will be replicating to all the buildings in Bolzano the same refurbishment activities that we did for the districts of the Sinfonia project? So we run 2 scenarios. This one that you see is a maximum energy performance. So we assume to bring all the buildings to 50 kilowatt hour per square meter here. So consumption, and the result is the percentage of saving around 61%. But next slide, please. The reality is a bit different, or could be a bit different, because we also learned during the refurbishment process that the costs could be very high and not really convenient in the entire life cycle cost assessment of the lifespan of the buildings. Could be not convenient to reach so higher classes in all the cases. So this is another scenario. This is cost optimality scenario, where we assume to reach different classes for different starting points. Well, this is leading us to another percentage of saving that is more close to 41%. I finished. I leave the word to Wolfgang for the conclusions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Daniele. And you were really fast with all the slides. Okay, so it's a status of the general conclusions. As I pointed out, we will go on with the measurements until the end of the year to get seasonal results for most of the buildings. So how is this delay coming? I wasn't there in the beginning, but we had a delay in the refurbishment process itself because buildings were delayed. We had to change some buildings, whatever. And that's, of course, if we want to monitor for 1 year, also delayed the measurement campaign. So as I pointed out, for Innsbruck, we can finish 9 of 13 buildings with end of July with a 1 year measurement. And in Bolzano, it will be 1 building. And in the end, it will be 13 and 4 buildings being measured, at least over a period that we can extrapolate. For some buildings, we really have to then to extrapolate for the 1 year measurement campaign, which is easily been done. Okay, so finally, we will have some revised reports. We write in the current reports as much as we have available right now. So in total, we have 2035 apartment school clusters in Innsbruck, 112 in Bolzano, which is a bit less as we had in the proposal. But as I pointed out, the data protection issues and the tenants agreements and everything that was not foreseeable when we wrote the proposals put us a bit down here. But I think it's still a good value. We have still a lot of statistics and a lot of data in these buildings available. So we can have some general conclusions being drawn. As I pointed out, in Innsbruck, we more or less reached everything what we set to be reached. In Bolzano, we're still under validation because you have to also look for the indoor temperature and the climate and all that was around. Also in the smart city measures, we were reaching most of our goals. And if we do the upscaling, well, we can also, of course, show in the reports then that we could achieve, if we replicate all the measures within our districts, that it could be reachable on the overall goals. So hopefully these outcomes will help also European Union to find their new strategies. Well, thanks so far from my side, and I see Hakan is already urgent to follow.
Yes, thank you very much, Wolfgang and Daniela. There's just one question, so I'll ask it quickly. Was it possible to publish the monitoring results in an academic publication like Energy and Buildings? Journals ask for data sets. If yes, how was the privacy issue dealt with? I guess not,
Okay,
since we haven't finished the monitoring yet, but...
Okay, we have already published the data of the schools because the privacy issue is here very simple. If the owner of the schools allows us to do that, it's fine. It was not energy in buildings, it was 2 passive house conferences, but of course we will do that also in these journals. I'll try to put it there. If we go for the buildings, for the apartments, we have to, as you also have seen here, we are not allowed to show where are the apartments located in the building. We are not allowed to give even the address of the building, so it must be anonymized. If we can have, so that's a bad thing because you cannot really track back what is happening there. But this is data protection issue. I'm sorry.
Likewise, we are very interested in publishing the dataset. If we find a way to do it, we are in close communication with our data protection officer to understand all the possibilities to publish the datasets.
All right, thank you. And with that, I will give the floor to Hakan, who is already eager to present and ready. So Hakan, over to you. Håkan, I guess there is no sound. I don't know if you switched on your microphone. It seems to be switched on, but we cannot hear you.
Okay, now, is it
yeah,
better?
now we can.
Now, yes, right.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen as well?
Yes, we can, yeah.
Good, great. Okay, so, right, we are running slightly behind schedule, which is not unusual for this project. We have so much to speak about. So I am trying to wrap this up and close this with a bit of a sort of outlook of what lies ahead. We have touched upon this several times now in previous presentations, and I think that this quote, very old quote, kind of summarize this long project, which we have not only worked in to sort of achieve change, but it has also changed us as persons and the project partners. So we're not closing this project with a standard project meeting. I'm, as you can see, sitting at home. We've all been more or less in quarantine for the past months, and focus has shifted quite substantially to very urgent matters of health and economic recovery. There is or will be a time when this pandemic will be of less central focus. And by that time, we will need to return to the commitment and the urgent need for transformation or transition towards a sustainable society. Just before the pandemic broke out, the Commission launched the European Green Deal, which is to a very large extent sort of based on the Sustainable Development Goals. So they go hand in hand to a large extent. One can say whatever we want about these coming strategies. We have throughout this long period seen several of these being launched on national or European level. However, there is a need to address the content of it regardless of what the branding or the strategy is called. And to do that, in this way, the European Commission now has launched some forthcoming calls, and with sort of 11, according to 11 different strategies. So they will be in this way or a slightly different way, likely very central in the coming years. And I think that I picked the ones who are most central to this project and to the content of what we work with. Supplying clean, affordable, secure energy, which is obviously the kind of core of Sinfonia. Building and renovating in an energy and resource efficient way. This is what we have done and achieved. Accelerating shift to smart, sustainable mobility has perhaps not been central in the project, but I will come to that later, why this is also very relevant for the project and for the project partners. Pursuing green finance and investments. We have seen, and as been presented by previous speakers, also the economic effects, and this will give incentives for recalculating the return on investments, etc. Mobilization of research and fostering innovation. This is also something that points out, which is also very central to our project, or which is we have sort of realized that within the project. This has been presented by several speakers before. I just tried to kind of summarize all of these transitions that is done and what is required. All of these systems, all of these solutions that we have achieved and especially what the Green Deal requires are system solutions. They're not sort of individual technical solutions that you can just apply. They require several kind of components that need to work together. And to realize that, we could apply or look at it in the perspective of technological innovation systems, or be inspired about that, which requires then knowledge development, and in this case, how smart cities and large integrated implementations are being done. How do we pool resources? It could be financial, it could be human, it could be political. We need to involve relevant stakeholders. This is nothing that you can do only as one actor in society. And also very important to understand, to assess and prioritize strategies and solutions. What kind of solutions do you apply, and what combinations of solutions do you apply? That requires a capacity of the partners. We have touched upon this. This project and the solutions foreseen for the Green Deal requires market understanding of market effects. What are the customers able to pay for? How can we change the way we look at pricing and services of energy, etc. And legitimacy, how do we get public support, or rather avoid political or public protests or opinions against changes? And finally, how do we involve the right entrepreneurs? It could be private entrepreneurs, it could also be entrepreneurs or people with ambitions within organizations. How do we allow them to work and to experiment and to test new solutions within public organizations? All of these aspects are crucial to be able to realize the Green Deal. And I think for all of these, we can see clear examples, which has been touched upon by several of the speakers before, that this have been integral parts of the success of Sinfonia. We have been able to develop strategies. We have been able to involve stakeholders and the public. The relevant partners have been there, and we can now see that we have developed our understanding of what is like and what is required from partners to implement such large scale and integrated solutions. So in effect, this project throughout this very long period, Daniela mentioned that the proposal was written already in 2012, which is a very long time ago. And throughout that, we can see that we have the working, especially in the two pilot cities or the lighthouse cities, depending on what you would like to call them, have changed quite significantly. Sometimes on purpose, because it's sort of this is in the nature of the project. I think some of it is because of almost by accident, or by the project applying some kind of transition pressure on the partners. So we can see that we have gone from quite strict barriers between partners to a much larger sort of collaborative approach by the city partners, who previously were working in silos, and where we now can see a network kind of approach or collaboration between partners, that the barriers and who does what is still important, obviously, but you join forces and you can work across boundaries or border or organizational borders. You can also see that the perception of that it has to be correct from the beginning changes gradually to an awareness that there are always risks in these kind of, if you would like, experiments. Sometimes you cannot know exactly the outcome, and sometimes their need for changes and unexpected outcomes, and then you need to change that, and that's kind of a big mental transformation. And also you see that we go from a sort of more of top-down planning to a higher level of involvement and co-creation in these processes. We have heard this from previous speakers about the involvement of tenants and stakeholders, which has been sort of rapidly developed and improved throughout this project. So coming back and trying to put this in relation to the Green Deal and what's at stake, I kind of see this, I'd like to see this, and I hope that many others see this project as a kind of launch, a start of something, a much longer process. Sinfonia has been very long, but in the very long run, 6 or 7 or 8 years is a very short period of time. What we have sort of managed to do here, I think, within this project is to create some kind of super lighthouse cities, if you'd like. In the Horizon 2020, the Commission launched the concept of lighthouse cities, which were the partners aiming to create these smart city solution. Now, what is a city that has already gone through this, that knows all what is required, knows everything, both in terms of the sort of project bureaucracy, but also has established this internal collaboration culture? Well, that can't be anything else than some kind of super lighthouse city. And I think that we have shown that we have two here. I think Sinfonia is, to my understanding, one of the first projects which in smart cities which really dealt with the concept of scaling and replication. This has been something that is very central to other Horizon 2020 project, and you can see that coming again in the terminology from the European Commission, that we need to look at both scalable and replicable solutions. This is something that we have worked with ever since the start of the project. We have developed both analyses and also tools to be able to assess and analyze the energy systems and energy demand in the district. We've seen some of the slides previously about the understanding of the district demand. We have also been able to drastically improve our understanding and our ability to analyze what is required by a city in order to transform, and what are the effects if you do this in a large scale. And coming back, to the stakeholder involvement, which is something that has been running throughout this project, the need for stakeholder involvement and all the communication capacity that we have built in this project. There are numerous technical solutions that have been developed and tried in the project. Some have been mentioned here. There are on the website and other communication channels examples of this. And I think that we've also created a large outreach for this project to a very large audience. Not at least during this spring, where we have run a long series of very successful webinars on various aspects of this project. So I think that with this in mind, I'm quite confident, I'm very happy that we as a consortium, the pilot cities as local partnerships are in a position now to really take on the challenges, to go beyond the objectives of this project and to aim for more large scale ambitions or commitments to contribute or to achieve the objectives of the Green Deal and the requirements that are in that. So I think that that's a summary of the project. Yeah, I'll end it here. If there are any questions, I'm happy
Thank you
to
very much.
answer.
Håkan, and if there are any questions for any of the speakers, and for Håkan as well, do not hesitate to write them down or ask them. I can see there is one question. Thank you, dear speakers, for your brilliant interventions. Faced with energy challenges and climate change, which should be the primary role of local governors, to review our modes of organization and functioning, and what urgent actions must be taken for a global energy transition. So it's a very global question.
Yeah.
What should the local governors do to review our modes of organization and functioning, and what urgent action must be taken for a global energy transition?
Wow.
It's very ambitious. Somebody willing to respond to?
Well, I could, if I'm allowed to, Wolfgang.
Yes, of course, yes.
Sure. Okay. Well, to bring it to the point, in the building sector, things are taking very long time. But everything we do today will be still there in 2050. And renovation rates are low because you're going to renovate something if it's broken. And then it's another 40 or 50 years in operation until it breaks again. So in terms of buildings, we have to start right now. If we do a refurbishment, if you make a new building, it must be, I call it always 2050 ready. So not doing a bit today and say we do the rest later. No, if you do something today, do it 2050 ready. If you replace a window, you have a lot of costs that occur anyway, because you have to take out the old window, then the new window, you make a plaster on it, whatever. So a lot of costs you have anyway, and you just have the incremental cost of putting a very good window to a normal window in there, and this is very low. And that is the same for all the refurbishment states. So you have to adapt your building codes in a way that you do very, very good things now, that you put that in the building codes. That we have to do right now. Otherwise, we will not reach any reduction of the energy demand in buildings.
Thank you, Wolfgang. We have one thank you from Naomi. She says, thank you to all the presenters for showing the Sinfonia results. What a wonderful project. So we have some compliments here. I have a question for Håkon. Yeah. After this definitely challenging experience as coordinator and so many years, if you had the chance to coordinate again a smart city project of such scale, would you do it or?
Yeah, I think that I need a couple of years of resting. No, yeah, I think that this has been an extremely rewarding process, and learned a lot from, well, personal mistakes and other things that's we could have done better in the beginning. But I mean, it depends all. I think that's this is something that you don't do as an individual. Would I have the chance to work with this consortium again? Then obviously, yes, I would do it again. I think that we have throughout the year created something extraordinary in this team, which is a bit sort of sad now to see that we have to let it go. But yeah, absolutely, I would do it again.
All right, that's a good answer. And thank you. Well, what else could we ask? Is there any other questions? And still, you have some time to write them down. And how do you feel about this project ending? Is it more of a relief or sadness, or mixture of two?
Well, I think it's both to some extent. I think that it is time now to close it. I just think it's a shame that we couldn't do it in another way, but that's how it is. That's the reality. But I think that I'm quite happy that we reached the end results after so many years of long sort of achievement or some parts struggle. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been very, very challenging, but very, very interesting and very, very fun as well.
All right. Thank you very much for answering. And I think if you have no other questions, if there are any other questions, then people can always write them by email. We are quite accessible and happy to respond to them. So I think we've already
should I
gone a little bit.
summarize this off as we agreed quite rapidly on the on the chat. Let's see here if I can just turn on this. Here we go, like this. We're a bit behind. I'm happy for your patience, those of you who are still here. It's a bit weird when you kind of know that there are quite a lot of familiar persons and faces out there, but you cannot see them. And I see that there are many people within this meeting that I have had the chance to learn to know over the years. There are also some external partners, and those of you who have to have some patience or understanding for this. This is going to be a bit more internal for those who have had the benefit to work with throughout the years. Just to go through this, as I said, it's been a long journey, and personally, I'm kind of sort of looking back, a bit surprised that a person like me who don't do any skiing or really don't like winter ended up in this part of Europe where people are more or less born on skis. So it's amazing where life takes you. It has not always been fun to go to this part of Europe. It has been a bit sensitive to weather conditions, and sometimes by accident the stays have been a bit longer, but mostly it has been fun. I think that we started off this journey in a very good way. What can go wrong when you start off in Swedish summer, which is almost exactly now 6 years ago, just after midsummer in Borås, where we had this midsummer fest. And then throughout these years, all the places we have gone to and all the pipes and machines and installations we have looked at, which I still to this day have no idea what they were doing and really why I was looking at them. But what I think I do understand a little bit about are the refurbishment schemes, which we have looked at before and during, and then finally after renovation, and we have seen this transformation, which has been amazing and really satisfying. That throughout these years we have actually achieved this, which was quite fantastic, really. And throughout the years, we have also done, I don't know how many events and fairs, exhibitions, meetings, workshops with post-it notes and work package descriptions and everything. So it has really been fun and interesting during these meetings to listen to all the achievements, all the work, all the knowledge that is both invested and also generated in this project. I think that we have also been very lucky to be able to go to some of the most beautiful places in Europe. We being able to go to all these places and seeing on site, both enjoying the local traditions, but also to understand the local conditions and the reality in terms of energy poverty, the challenges that the cities are meeting now, which is both unique in a sense, but also quite common to all cities in Europe. I personally, I've really enjoyed spending time, very unexpectedly, enjoyed spending time in these two cities. I don't know how many times I've actually been to these Christmas markets, both in Innsbruck and Bolzano, and really enjoyed the local environment, and actually being sort of quite happy to be able to find my way around in these cities, which are, so they are not at home, but at home, but it's a little bit sort of you get familiar with being there, which has been really fun. But I think that the best part of this project has been to be able to work with this team. Some of you have been around from the start. We have then seen some of our friends leaving for other positions or other jobs, and we have greeted newcomers to the team. But I think that's this has been really the only sort of real reason for the success of this project is this team that we have had throughout the years, being able to really create a collaboration and a trust, and we have had quite a lot of fun within this group, which really then makes it all possible. So this has been the absolutely best part of this project. I wasn't able to greet you to my hometown, our hometown, Gothenburg, but this was the intention, to be able to show a very different part of Europe, especially for those of you living up in the mountains. But I hope that if you have the chance to come even near Gothenburg, you're simply not allowed to be there without letting me know. I hope that you will have the chance to visit here on another occasion. I hope that we can all meet up in other contexts, in other projects, or similar collaboration structures. So, as said with the previous presentation, I hope that this is really the start of something else, and I'd like to thank you all very much for this meeting, for this project, for having the opportunity to coordinate this project. It's been both challenging, but mostly very fun and interesting. So I will not, with this, say goodbye, definitely, but I will thank you all and say auf Wiedersehen.
Yes, also on behalf of Renovate, me and our director, Vicky Moisterin, would like to thank you all for the presentations, for the meeting, and of course for the project, and congratulations for driving it up to the finish line successfully. It's been a long run.
Yeah, really.
And those who want to know more about the project, they can always catch up on with our webinars. The recordings are available on YouTube and on our website, and also there'll be some articles about the results, etc. in the days to come. So do not hesitate to visit the website, and thank you again for joining us today and for the nice meeting we've had. And have a nice evening all. Bye.
Bye to everybody. Bye and see you somewhere.
See you around.